Seventh Circuit, the First Circuit, whatever. Okay, those cases will go the wrong way. And we'll wind up, the Supreme Court will probably come out with a ruling that will say states like Illinois, who have shall issue, they will probably be encouraged to do may issue. And we'll wind up like New York or Hawaii, who issued a grand total of 1 permit last year. So they are issuing permits, but it's just 1. Delaware, Maryland, New York, all those kind of, New Jersey, all those kind of places. And what that case, Pirata versus San Diego, is claiming that you shouldn't have to prove that your life is in danger to get a concealed carry permit. And of course, the city of San Diego is saying, yes, you do. And of course, by the time you get the permit, you're dead. So that's part of that. But all those cases that are hanging out there, you're looking at the McDonald case, okay? We're looking at Heller versus D.C. We're all comfy and cozy thinking about those cases, but if you get the wrong court, the anti-gunners will bring cases against that and try to overturn those things, okay? I'm not saying it'll happen tomorrow, but it will happen. And so we'll have to work very, very hard on that. I'm not sure how far we can go or what we can do, but I look for those things to start reversing. We've had a lot of good successes. We really have. And, but not as much as, of course, I want, and not probably as much as you want, but we've had those good successes, and I think we'll see those successes being eroded pretty quickly there with those sorts of things. As far as the General Assembly goes, I don't see any real big changes. It's already tough down there, just so you know that. And it's a coalition of pro-gun Democrats and Republicans. And before you get all warm and fuzzy about some of the Republicans, some of those Republicans take one heck of a lot of work to keep them pro-gun. A Northern Illinois Republican takes more work than a Southern Illinois Democrat by far. Okay, so just because they got an R behind their name doesn't mean you need to remind them what they're doing. But right now we have a coalition. If you look at Speaker Madigan, he has 72 votes, which 71 is a supermajority, so you can override any veto if it was straight along party lines, pass any law he wants, and there's nothing you can do about it. The same is true in the Senate. President Cullerton has 40 votes. 40 votes, okay, out of 59, another supermajority. So he's got that by 2 or 3 votes. So if it wasn't for some of the Democratic senators, like Senator Haynes, Senator Forby, some of those people, that would be a problem. And say, well, why can't we just elect some more Republicans? Well, I'm just telling you the way I think it is here tonight. You may not like it, but suppose I have a very pro-gun Democrat, and I have to ask him to go to the speaker and allow something or work on something or something. I'm going to get at least the speaker's ear. Now, suppose I have a very pro-gun Republican. What do you think the speaker is going to tell him? That's right, the exit that way. Don't let the door hit you in the ass, right? So one of the things that happens is, because we have those pro-gun Democrats in the House and the Senate, that those people can talk to the President of the Senate, they can talk to the Speaker of the House. Okay? So that makes a big difference. It's not what you want to hear, but it's politics, And if you have to really mix it up down there. And you really have to be careful, and you have to know what you're doing, or things fall apart quickly. So we have those races. And but I don't see any big changes, you know. And I know we have, I just don't see any big changes unless something strange happens in Illinois. You know, I don't think there'll be too much. We'll find out, though, on the 9th, I suppose. But anyway, the other part of this is, you know, we have local candidates, all right, county board candidates, city council candidates, town council candidates, library board candidates, school board candidates. All those people have to be looked at, because if you look at the biographies of the representatives of the state of Illinois, the senators in the state of Illinois, and the people who moved into higher positions, almost all of them came up through the ranks. Okay, they started out maybe as a school board person, or they started out as a city councilman, quite common, or a county board member. You want to make sure that you pay attention to those races. You want to elect pro-gun people at those levels, because they move their way up. It's only a matter of time, you know. They're going to get up. Some of them have ambitions to go higher. And if they come out of that kind of background, a governmental background, they do have good experience. They know how things work. And they become very influential in Springfield. And so you have to really look at those things. So we have some county board races, and you know, that you need to look at. The same is true as judgeships. Judgeships, we endorsed one judge, which is Randy Moore down in the 5th, which is clear on the other end of the state. But there's not too many judges that will come out and say that they are pro-gun. You know, I get calls from people saying, why don't you endorse more judges? Because a judge doesn't have to tell you what he thinks. You know, if I have a person who's state rep, they have to tell me what they think, or I can say that you are in, or you're out, or we don't like you, or whatever. But a judge doesn't have to do that. So you really have to work hard, and judges are very dangerous. Okay, judges are very dangerous. You think you got yourself a lake trout, and it turns out to be a carp, and you just can't tell the difference until they're in the boat. So it becomes a problem. And the primary example of that is a judge by the name of Sandra Day O'Connor. You know, she's a Kansas girl, conservative judge, got appointed to the Supreme Court. She started hanging around the inside parties that the Supreme Court justices have, and the people they hang with, and she became a very liberal judge. So it's always something you have to be aware of. It's hard to do judges. So what are we going to do? Well, if Donald Trump's elected, I don't want you to think that we can lay down. That will not happen. I'm going to tell you what, if you're a gun owner in this country, you can never lay down. If you do, you might as well just put doormat and welcome on your back and let it go at that. Because there's constant pressure from very wealthy people, like George Soros, like what's his face, Bloomberg, you know, very, very wealthy people who want to push this agenda. Some of this money actually comes in from overseas that wants to do this. There are people in the world that don't like us. They don't like the freedoms that we have. And there are some people in this world who look at the United States like a big piece of pie and they want a slice of it. So it's going to be an ongoing battle. If Donald Trump's elected, it will shift, the battle will shift to the state and local governments, like we're having now. I mean, the battle's in state and local government right now. We have Highland Parks, Deerfield, those kinds of things. Those will continue, Oak Park, and those will just be harder to deal with. That's where they'll put their money. If Hillary's elected president, they probably will not do as much at that level, although they will always do something if there's an opportunity. But they will shift then to the national level, and it will be a real problem. So on the 8th of November, we'll have an election. On the 9th of November, we'll recover, and on the 10th of November, we'll start planning for the next one. So that's really how it works. Oh, hi, Don. I didn't know you were coming. So there's a Will County board member right there, Don Moran. Go vote for him. If you don't live in his district, go vote for him anyway. But anyway, so we'll see that shift back to the national level, particularly if there's any kind of great shift in the House and Senate. And all that could happen. I'm just telling you, I look at those polls, and I look at them in the morning, I look at them at noon, and I look at them at night, and I listen to who says what about where, and all kinds of, I'm constantly checking sources. And I want to tell you that right now I'm not sure anybody knows what's really going on. The hope, and I always point out that hope is a very poor strategy, that is that there's a lot of people laying in the weeds out there that want to come out and vote for Donald Trump. And I think that there's some truth to that. I just don't know if there's enough of them. That becomes the real problem here. So every dog and cat has got to go vote. And so that becomes a problem. I think that you'll see the election much closer than the polls are showing, but I don't know that Mr. Trump can overcome all that. One of the things that I mentioned a while back is that if you take your car to a mechanic today, he has a machine with all kinds of electronic gizmos on it that will tell you what's wrong with the car, maybe. But that doesn't mean that he threw away his open-end wrench that he started with 40 years ago. Okay, so one of the problems we have is, and then Mr. Trump, is that he has no ground game. He really doesn't, okay? And so he is depending on social media. He's depending on his presence at all these speeches. And I give him credit. He's working hard. But when it comes right down to it, it doesn't have a organization in a precinct necessarily, or in a county, or in a town or township, or whatever the jurisdiction is, that is designed to turn out the vote and get the hesitant people there. There are some people who vote no matter what. But there are some people that have to be prodded, pushed, towed, yanked, threatened, and strangled to get into the polls. And he does not have that game. So that is something that we'll have to watch. But we don't know, really, how the social media thing works. I mean, if you look at CNN, apparently 98.7 people are going to vote for Henry. Percent of the people are going to vote for Hillary. Okay, but so we're getting a lot of stuff out there, but nobody actually knows how this social media thing's going. If you look at the number of social media followers and stuff like that, Trump has, I don't know, I can't remember all the numbers. It changes. 36 million or some crazy thing like that, and Hillary has 23 million. But whether they translate into votes or not, we don't know. If you call up and take a poll, the scientists say they have it all figured out, but they said they had it all figured out in Britain too, and they didn't. And they've had many elections. If you remember the election of 1948 or read about it, the Truman election, they knew John Dewey was going to win, except that he didn't. So that was the only problem with it, So we got to turn out, we got to work hard, I know somebody here said they're going to walk precincts for some candidate. That's what it takes. You know, they have to have the ground game. You still have to knock on the door. You know, you still have to deliver mail. You still have to do all the things that have been done and add social media on top of it to really come up with what you want, I think. So I think that the game is only getting more complicated, you know, and I don't think there's ever any one answer to any election. So I think that is true. So what's going to happen after the election? I don't know. But I do know that we're going to have to continue to work. We're going to have to step up our efforts. We got people like Mike Wiseman and Gary Doherty here. Gary, you know, doing town hall meetings. Everything like that. Bill? You know, everything like that makes a difference. You know, nothing makes a big difference. A drop of water doesn't make a big difference, but if you ask them in North Carolina, it did, because you get enough drops. And that's really what has to happen. Okay, you have to continue to work on that, and there isn't any aspect of this that you can ever let go or assume doesn't matter, because it does matter. And so we have to work on those things. You know, and you got a good population area up here, so town hall meetings and things work. Downstate is different. There's a lot of distance between places, so you have a different element down there, slightly different animal. So sometimes I go down there and I do 2 or 3 on a weekend down there, and just sort of town hall meetings like once a year or something like that. But you know, so you have that. You're going to have to show up more. You know, I was really. I wasn't happy. I wasn't disappointed, but I wasn't happy with last year's iGold. When you look at iGold and you look at the people in that Capitol building, when you guys are walking down there with your yellow hats and your yellow shirts and all that kind of stuff, you see people at the top of the Capitol building peeking out the windows looking at you. They know if you're there, and they know how many there are. And the more there are, the more they go back and tell Senator so-and-so and Representative so-and-such that you were out there, and there's a lot of them. And that makes a difference. And so we have some things in Illinois that become an advantage to us, even though you don't think they are. One of them is like the Ford card. Very few states know how many gun owners they have, legal gun owners. So we know, for example, that we got about 2,100,000 legal gun owners. We also know that in 2010 we had about 1 million legal gun owners. So we have had over 100% increase since 2010, last 6 years. That's something that should be noted. That's something that should be talked about, you know, and that's something that we need to deal with. And as struggle as we might, as we thought, you know, for a while we were never going to get anywhere with concealed carry, we're up over 200,000 concealed carry permits, and one of the goals was 300,000. So none of this happens quickly. You constantly have to work on it. There's no question about it. You constantly got to get more people involved. You got to ask your neighbor, your brother, your friend, your aunt, your sister, whatever, to go get her concealed carry permit, or at least her FOID card, to keep pushing those numbers up, because those numbers matter. So we just have to constantly work on this every day. Every day when I get up, I turn on the news, and when I can't stand anymore, I take a shower and shave and go to work. So, but you know, those things matter. One of the things that I want you to do, though, is I don't want you to waste your time on certain things. I very seldom will ask you to come to Springfield or do something. When I do, though, I mean it, okay? One of the things that happened today, a guy called me, and maybe he's here today, I don't know, maybe he's here tonight. He said that he was running for state rep in a district, and I quickly looked down the list, and I don't see a name there. So I say, okay, I'm sorry, I guess I don't see your name on the state list of people who are running. He said, oh, well, I'm running a write-in campaign. Okay, All right, running a write-in campaign. I can see where this is going. When did you start? I'm starting today. What day is this? If you get, I'm not saying that the person's not a well-meaning person. I'm not saying he's not a good person. I'm just saying he's not a wise person, okay? If you start a campaign, 13 or whatever days it is before the election, and you're not on the state list of candidates, and you're running a write-in campaign, what chances do you think you have? Okay, not much. A snowball in hell has more chances than this guy does. So if you are helping a candidate, make sure they're a viable candidate. A few in the previous primary election, there was a guy running against Mark Kirk. Then I talked to him, and I talked to his campaign manager 6-7 times. So I asked him questions like, okay, what kind of budget do you have? Well, we really don't have one yet. Well, I got news for you. This is a money game. When we ask you for donations, we're asking you for donations because it takes money to run one of these operations. What organization? Well, who do you have? Do you have people in different counties? Well, no. Well, okay. So when you ask these questions of these candidates, you wind up in a very short time, probably in less than a minute, I can tell you whether they got a chance or they don't have a chance. The only people that don't seem to know that is them and their campaign manager. So you have to look at the candidates like that. You can have the best candidate you ever saw, but if he doesn't have any organization, doesn't have any money, principle doesn't work. You can't get the word out. You simply can't do that. So don't waste your time on those candidates. If you know somebody that wants to run the next time, then about the 10th of November would be a good time for them to start working, because that's going to come up. Now, in 2 years, we're also going to have a gubernatorial race. Right now, we have a backstop that we've never had before. We have a governor who will veto most anti-gun bills, okay? But we may not have that at the next election. So the next election, every time you see something, I'll write something like, this is the most important election. You know why? Because it's the current one. The last one don't matter anymore. I'm going to tell you what, on the 9th of November, the 2016 presidential race don't matter anymore. It's over. Put it away, shove it in the drawer, learn your lessons from it, begin the next attack. I keep telling people there's only 2 conditions in this country for gun owners. You're either at war or preparing for war. Okay, you can have Tuesday off between noon and 1 if you want, but that's it. Okay, so that's what we have to constantly do. And we have to recruit more people into the fight. So we got so many gun owners, and we got 1% that belong to the ISRA, and we got about 3% that belong to the NRA. And so we got 96%, or maybe more, because they probably joined both, riding for free. We've got to get those people in there. You cannot get an organization in a critical time to move rapidly if you don't have membership, access, that sort of thing, guidance, plans. All those things take time to do. And if you have to get people recruited and organize them before you can act, it's over. Things move too fast today. They move too fast. So you have to be ready. In the January, on the second Wednesday in January, which I can't remember, I think it's the 12th or something like that, the new legislature, the 100th General Assembly, will take its seat. What we'll get, we don't know. We haven't seen the election results yet. But there's another thing that happens. In that time between the election and between the seating of the new General Assembly, and within a month after that, there are certain state reps who have been elected, but they'll decide they want to quit. And the rules are that they're party then can appoint their successor. And they've done that, and they won't face an election for 2 years. So you constantly have to work on that and constantly have to deal with that. So it becomes very, very important that we get all that stuff done. So anyway, I talked probably way too long. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yes?
I actually have two. One is if Illinois or any other state that is a shall issue state becomes, through future legislation, a may issue state, how does that affect the current concealed carry licenses that have already been issued? Can they? Well, the second question I have is, how likely is it that the UN can usurp the Constitution of the United States, especially the first 10 amendments to the Bill of Rights, without Congress's and Senate's ratification of that?
Okay, well, the first question first. I hope we all got about 8 hours here. The short answer is, I don't think it will affect the licenses that are currently there. I don't think so. It could happen on renewal, but I don't think it will affect those. I think that's too great a change, and I think that's why everybody ought to get a concealed carry permit right away. Okay, so you'll have undoubtedly grandfathering. There'll be too much chaos. For one thing, if you look at the 200,000 licenses, and we have plus, and those licenses gained the state $150 a piece. Okay, that's a lot of money into the state of Illinois. Even they will understand that. They don't understand it about when you say this will come, but they do understand it better if you say you're going to take it away from them. So I think that will be a player. If you get states, though, that they have constitutional carry, there might be danger there, okay, because there is no licensing procedure particularly. Now, I know we don't like licensing procedures, but the people who have licenses in this state and Florida and wherever have gone at least through some kind of vetting process, you know. But the constitutional carry states do not, so that might be one of the things that's in danger. As far as the UN goes, until you get the Senate, and it's only the Senate, to ratify a treaty, then nothing is going to happen. But if the Senate changes, okay, then it could happen. It certainly could happen. And so the treaty ratification becomes the law of the land. And so that's why working in the Senate and the House, but in the Senate particularly, that's, you know, we've only got 100 chances there. And so, you know, I forgot how many are up. This time, I think I can't remember exactly, just don't go home and write this down, as Sid Pearson said. I think there's something like 23 senators or something like that up in the next 2 years. And so that becomes something that we'll have to really, really work on. Whoever wins the presidency, it is more likely that a majority of the seats will go for the other party in the off-year election. It seems to always happen because, you know, people have, I think voters have buyer's remorse. I know I have it a lot. Every time I vote, the next day I have buyer's remorse. No, not quite, but anyway. But you know, so we'll see that. So we'll have to keep working on that. Okay. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Regarding the tax on guns and ammunition in Cook County, why would a dealer not want to work to get rid of that?
Because it's a political system. They're worried about being targeted, I would think.
In the meantime, they're losing customers.
Well, that's true. But if they are, I know there's a couple of dealers that are thinking about new real estate. And so I think that's really the goal of them. But But you got to realize, if you go through this court system right now, and Hillary wins, where's that case going to go? No, it's going to wind up back in your lap. And if it becomes the law of the land rather than just a local issue, it's a much greater problem.
We have other people with questions. If you could come up here to the center.
Use your mic.
If we have other people with questions, if you could come up here to the center, you could use the microphone, and we could get one or two staged, ready to go for the next question also.
One of the things I'll do is I'll have a small commercial announcement for those who may or may not know. We are the first state affiliate for the United States Concealed Carry Association. They've had local affiliates before. They've never had a state affiliate. We are the first one. So we're also affiliated with some other groups, but the Second Amendment Foundation, of course, NRA and that sort of thing. So it's extraordinarily important that all these groups work together in some way or another to keep our civil rights where they are, our gun rights where they are. So I think that's important to realize. Yes?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John. I live in Cook County, and yeah, I know. I've been reading quite a bit over the last couple of years about this UN initiative to disarm the United States. And personally, I'm 41 years old, and I find it terrifying. I've had a rifle in my hand since I was 7 years old. And to be honest, I wanted your opinion, sir. What is the likelihood of that kind of legislation being passed by Congress? And if so, what are our means to repel it?
Well, you only have one means to repel it, and that's to elect people who don't want to do that. That's the only means you have. It becomes the law of the land. But remember, every election is extraordinarily important, and the last one isn't important anymore. You just have to deal with the aftermath of the last election. So it becomes critical that right now, for example, if the Republicans are in the head of the Senate, whoever their senatorial leader is, will resist that. But if the Senate changes over, the Democrat who will become the leader of the Senate, if Harry Reid or someone like him becomes the leading politician in the Senate, then it can happen. And so I don't want to paint a rosy picture for you. I don't want to paint a black one either. But it all depends on who's in the Senate and how much work we do. Okay, we can never get by without work. The problem with hope is that you hope something happens, but you've applied no work, you've made no effort, you've made no investment of any kind. So hope is you get what you get. The only way to control what you get is to work hard for it and to stay organized. Yes, sir.
I had a question about the dealer tax again, the firearm tax, and ammo tax. What specific step in the judicial process are we in or waiting on with regard to the $25 firearm tax? Like, are we waiting on a judge to decide something, or are we waiting on?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think we're waiting on the dealers to pursue that.
I thought there's like multiple open court cases right now. Is that not true?
Say that again. You get closer to the mic.
Are there not multiple open court cases right now on that?
Well, there are cases, but they're not going anywhere right now.
So what's the next step? Like, what has to happen next?
Well, somebody has to force the case to move. But you can remember, when you force a case to move in a hostile environment, you may not like what you get.
So are we waiting on a judge to decide?
No, we're waiting on people to decide in a national election. I think that becomes very important. Suppose you push the case and it becomes a federal case and goes to the 7th district. And the 7th district is controlled by Hillary Clinton. And the Supreme Court she appoints. What do you think is going to happen? Everybody in the country will get that same thing. Okay?
Russ Dan, when I'm involved with the DuPage County politics, I live out here in Wheaton. I disagree with you on one issue. You keep saying Republicans. We've got so many Republicans in name only We had the Benghazi Committee, we've had Fast and Furious, and we've had control of both parties, both houses, Senate and Congress, and they've got nothing done.
I think I alluded to that a couple times.
And this is where everyone's got to get out there involved. We got to get some term limits in here and get some of these guys out of here that haven't done squat. I'm a big supporter of Peter Roscom. He was on the Benghazi Committee. He's
Right.
very vehement on it. But we got other members of the Republican Party haven't done squat.
I agree with you, but the ability or the impetus for them to do squat comes from you guys, comes from me, comes from the other voters. You know, they may not want to do it, but they can certainly be urged to do it by their constituents.
And I respect Peter. He just came to our township meeting and said Trump was not his first choice of candidates, but he's backing Mr. Trump 100% because the other option is terrible.
Well, I agree with that. I have what I call the weenie factor. We have a lot of people in this country who are weenies, if you know what I mean. So, okay. Yes, sir.
I had a couple of questions again. How likely is Bruce Rauner's term limits to be passed in this election successfully?
0.
Be what?
None.
None.
Okay.
The other is, we have a Senate majority of Republicans, but of the liberals that are in the Senate, how many?
You're talking about Congress.
Yeah, well, I mean in the Senate would have to ratify a UN treaty, right?
Right.
Of the Senate.
You're talking about the federal,
Yeah, the federal.
not state. Okay.
No, not the state. I'm sorry about that. But of the federal liberals that are in the Senate, how many would you estimate are progressive socialists that are, in my estimation, a little bit different than regular liberal?
I actually don't know that answer. I know that it depends on the pressure they get from their home states. It really does. And if they see that they aren't going to get elected, they will become more conservative. But but if you can put somebody in there that actually is a conservative, it makes a difference. If you have a person that goes there as a conservative, for example, or goes there as a liberal, it is very difficult for them to change their spots. They might put a little paint on them sometimes, but the spots will still be there. So we have actually re-educated some people on the gun issue, but I want to tell you what, it's a lot of work and it's an everyday effort. You know, Jim Manoble over there gets some kind of an Academy Award for some of the things that he has helped do and change people over. And there's a lot of people in Springfield that we have to see once a year, and they'll vote our way. But there's a lot of people that we have to see twice a day. Okay, so not quite that bad, but you know, you're constantly there. You're always worried about them. You always got to check them, you know, and so you know, it varies by individual. Lobbying is a very individual, very personal thing. So that becomes something you have to work at. So, you know, when you understand your candidates, when they come down to Springfield, it's a whole new ballgame once they're there. You know, we have to have your help. When we ask for phone calls, we're not kidding. We need phone calls. Because the worst thing that can happen to us is to ask for phone calls and not get any. That's bad. Yes, sir.
Jason Garcia, just moved back to Illinois from Dallas, Texas. We call that free country. But I did grow up in Illinois, so I know what it's like. Sterling, Illinois. My family, 3 generations of steel mill workers. I was down in Texas for about 5 years, trained with Force Recon Marines for 4 years, and then did some 3-gun competitions. Beautiful gun culture in Texas. And when I joined the Texas Rifle Association, I noticed a lot of collaboration between them and the National Rifle Association. And politically, getting Texans involved to run for state legislature and contribute to that gun culture so it's maintained in Texas. Now, I'm an Illinois boy. I grew up here. But having been in Texas for those years and just returning, by the way, I just got my FOID card.
Yeah, very good.
I'm still going to do 3-gun competitions, but I hope Hillary doesn't
Right.
take away my carbine. But my question is, and I'm just coming back now, and I just joined the Illinois State Rifle Association, so you tell me, I don't know, but how much collaboration is going on between the Illinois State Rifle Association and best practices that the National Rifle Association is doing to move the needle with regard to Springfield?
When we were in Springfield, we meet every day.
Okay.
Now, the other thing is that Mr. Don Moran over there, where'd he go? No. This man is interested in 3-gun competition. You want to talk to him about that later? Okay, he's a 3-gun shooter too.
And the last thing I'll just say, I was also in a militia when I was in Texas. There's a lot of militias there. Guess what's going to happen if they go to Texas and they try and do this?
They're gonna like it.
This UN thing. I
I
can
know.
tell you right now, there'll be another civil war
That's right.
because we're ready to fight in Texas.
Well, there's a lot of people that, you know, where were you born in Illinois? What part?
Sterling, Illinois.
Sterling, Illinois, okay. Well, we have Chicago, and then the rest of Illinois is almost like America.
Yeah, I call Chicago the Communist Republic of Chicago.
You're not the only one.
Yeah, and then there's the free state of Illinois. But anyways, that was my question, and it seems to me that there's so many cockroaches in Springfield that I don't know how you can get them all out of there.
Well, Illinois is different than any other state because, except maybe New York. New York has a problem with New York City. Illinois has a problem with Chicago. So when we look at the number of legislators in the state, based on population, so forth and so on, we've actually only got about 10 votes to work with out of 118 in the House, maybe 5 in the Senate. So we operate very well on a very thin margin. Not my idea to operate on a thin margin. I'd rather operate on a very fat margin, but that's not what I get. So it becomes very, very important when we have things like iGold and stuff like that, which is a big rally we have. You see a lady with a shirt there and a gentleman with a hat and another gentleman with a hat there, that we show up in Springfield and it makes a difference there. And our mere presence there makes a difference. So, thank you.
Thank you.
That's right. Stay in your precinct 30 days.
So I want to investigate who's running in my district, and I live in Chicago. How do I get that information?
You put in your, go to the website. Where'd Mike go? No. Go to the website, put in your address, and you're supposed to take it to your legislative district, right, Mike?
The Illinois State Board of Elections.
Illinois State Board of Elections.
And we often reference that in ISRA alerts.
Right. So you can do that. Yes, sir.
I would like to offer some clarification about the UN treaty. The principle of law here goes back to the Migratory Waterfowl Treaty. That was
That's
a
true.
treaty between Canada and the
1916.
United States. And based upon that, Congress imposed duck stamps and a penalty for hunting ducks without having it. That matter eventually came to the Supreme Court, and they said that having a treaty requiring something gives Congress additional power to do something that they didn't otherwise. However, Congress has to do this through regular legislation, both houses and the president, which means that if there is a ratification of the treaty and Congress does something with it, the next Congress has the ability to repeal, modify, or gut it.
That's true.
Okay.
I agree with you. We should have never got involved with those cotton picking ducks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the Migratory Waterfowl Treaty of 1916 is what started all this mess. I'm sure you learned that in school.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jim Amorati. I sent an email to Ann a couple of weeks ago because you send emails to the members about these town meetings, to show up at these town meetings and tell everybody that we're responsible gun owners.
Okay.
Any law library has the title books for Illinois, for the United States law, which are the law, the statutes, and the judgments. And Title 18, Section 242, Section 243, Section 244 basically says that if two or more people conspire to remove the rights or take away the rights of the citizens of the United States, they are liable for a $10,000 fine and 2 years in prison. Mm-hmm. And we discussed this with the mayor of the town I used to reside in, and if that's applicable, you can sue the mayor, the town council members, and the police department. So you can have 16 to 20 lawsuits against these individuals because of Title 18, Section 242.
I agree with you.
Why isn't that used in the town meetings or anything like that? If I get arrested, I can use that probably as a defense. I'll probably get slammed down.
But there's two sets of financing for that. For the mayor, police chief, town council, they use tax money. For us to bring that suit, we have to use our money.
But they would be responsible from a personal standpoint because they're personally
Well, you're talking
depriving us of our rights.
a 1983 type lawsuit. Yeah, I agree,
Right.
but that's only if they win. If we
Right.
win,
Right.
If we lose, we're out of business. We only got to lose one.
Yeah.
That becomes a problem. The problem is that what you say is technically right, but practically almost impossible.
So you can't use that in town meetings or anything like that?
You can threaten them, but there's no threat worth anything unless you follow up on it.
Yeah, because I'm sure most of the mayors and the city council members don't even know about Title 18.
Well, some of them know about it now, don't they not? Yeah, a few of them know. The mayor of Chicago knows, so we know that. He got to pay $600,000, $2 million, and a bunch of money, but then he doesn't care. Rhonda.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rhonda Ezell. My question is, how could I or someone go about bringing forth a new law to Congress about people that's holding office that are convicted felons? I don't believe they should hold office as a convicted felon, doing anything with laws, making laws for law-abiding citizens, especially in Chicago.
That would be, well, it can't be especially in Chicago. It's got to be everywhere. But you wouldn't have any government. You know that, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, okay. Well, what you would do is you would who's your congressperson?
That's the one that's the felon. That would be Bobby
Yeah,
Rush.
I know it. You know, you got the chicken garden, the fox garden hen house here. Anyway, so you would propose that law, and you would try to find some congressman to carry that law. And so there are some congressmen that would. They don't have to be your congressman to do that. They could be another congressman from another district. And so you should write that up and submit it. I'll make sure you send it to me, and I'll make sure that somebody gets it.
Okay, sounds
besides me. Okay. Okay.
Right.
All right. So yeah, there won't be anybody left, you know. I know what Rhonda's doing. Rhonda Ezell is one of the plaintiffs in the Ezell versus the city of Chicago, and she's a real American hero. I just want you to know that. So I think her goal is actually to run all those boogers out of town and become the mayor herself. That's what I think's going on. Yes, sir.
My question is, you probably have a better feeling for this, an observation from your position in the ISRA, but how friendly, for us that have concealed carry licenses, how friendly is the state police and local police, municipality governments to people who have concealed carries in this state? Are they supportive of it in case we get stopped? Do we expect more resistance to it than we would?
I will say this about the state police. They've been very cooperative with us. Okay. One of the problems we are having is the huge backlog of people who have been denied or not denied, protested by a local police department. I would say, I hate to guess, but I'm going to guess 90% of those protests come from Cook County. If they can find your name on any record anywhere, they will file a protest, and that will force that to go into the review committee. The review committee has like 2,200 cases in front of it, and there's like 5 or 6 or somebody, I don't remember how many people are on it, but they look at these cases, and we have some people that that get their concealed carry permit after they've viewed that it's been not true, Oak Park or someplace. And even though he wasn't the jurisdictional authority in Oak Park, it might have been the Oak Park Police Department, just using this as an example, he'll file on their behalf. He'll file it as the county sheriff. And so that's gumming up the works too. And so the Oak Park Police Department may have no problem with it at all. So he comes in and has a problem with it. So Tom Dart has become a real pain in the side, yeah. In the posterior extremity, it's a pain.
But the rest of the state,
No. But the state police themselves, we work with the state police lobbyists, the state police attorney, fine people. They don't want to give a concealed carry permit to a bad person, certainly, but they do hear and understand, and so we have a good working relationship. We work very hard to keep that working relationship. So state police aren't the problem.
What are the criteria to take concealed carry? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to just answer your question. I got involved with DuPage County politics with the concealed carry with Jeannie Ives and Heidi Holen, supporting it. Mike Connolly were very big supporters of getting concealed carry in Illinois. And I've talked with Bob Berlin, who's the DuPage County state's attorney. And originally in DuPage County, the DuPage County sheriffs were not very enthusiastic about citizens carrying firearms concealed. Bob Berlin's very neutral, to actually almost pro on it. Now, it's been 2.5 years since we've had concealed carry. It's been a non-issue, and they're very supportive. Bob Berlin told me directly that he's not worried about you or myself or Mike, law-abiding citizens carrying a weapon. He says he's not worried about that at all. And they're actually very pro on it. Just like there was a gentleman from Texas here, when they went to open carry, they said, oh my God, Texas is going to go insane because everyone's going to have open carry. Have there been any issues? No, there hasn't been. Just like the same fear and mongering that's been in Illinois here, it's like, oh my God, concealed carry is going to be people, well, where's the biggest death toll right now in the city of Chicago? And my other question I have for you is, how many people, the 4,000 people have been shot since Obama has been in office in Chicago? How many people have already voted for Hillary Clinton?
8,000 of them. But, yeah. But anyway, I forgot, I sort of fell off the track there. I forgot where I was going. But anyway, so almost the rest of the state, it's not a problem. And, there were all kinds of stories that, bad stuff would happen. And within 10 days of passing the issuing concealed carry permits to people, the whole thing quieted down. I've been stopped by the police. I said I have a concealed carry permit. He said, I know, I don't care. So, well, sure. When they run your license plate, it comes up on the lead system. The lead system tells them if you got a FOID card or a concealed carry permit. So if you try to lie, you just get yourself in a deep hole. If you just tell them the truth and act right, you don't have trouble. I know we got a couple ex-police officers here, or maybe more than a couple. The guys that they stopped and said, I need to do this, and they did it, that was the end of it. Well, the ones we hear about on TV that get themselves shot and that sort of thing, because they didn't do it. It's easy. Just follow the officer's orders and you'll come up pretty good.
I know a couple policemen that say when they pull somebody over, they're happy when they see that they're a concealed carry holder, because they say, number one, I know he's been vetted and he's known, opposed to people that they pull over, they don't know anything
Exactly.
about. So they're happy when they get a concealed carry person that they pull over.
Yeah, and and so, well, I keep my wallet I have my driver's license and my concealed carry card together. I just give them both to them. Yes, ma'am.
This lead system that you just mentioned, I got my FOID card, but it came like in 3 weeks. Everybody's talking about waiting 2 months. Was this because I had an Illinois Department of Professional Regulation license?
No.
When they run my plate, do they see that also?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, but what happened was, who around here are, besides Mike Wiseman, I wanted to hear from you, knows what Fortran is? What is it?
It's an old computer language for applications.
How old? Real old, right? Yeah. Until concealed carry was passed and we got enough money for the state police to update their FOID card computers, they were using Fortran to run the cards in COBOL. And they actually had to go find people that knew how to fix this cotton picking mess when it broke. So,
Only 2 people within their department that know anything about COBOL.
right. But they also had to hire people to come in once in a while because it was such a mess. So when we passed concealed carry, we got a lot of money so they could update their computer systems. When they updated the computer systems, the cards came out 10 times faster. And so the backlog, even though there were more cards being issued, dropped. It was up to 57 days. And there just wasn't anything they could do about it because they couldn't get it to work fast enough. Now it's running about 21 days. Some come in 14, actually.
You mentioned that if they find your name any old place, they could protest your concealed carry.
Well, not in any old place,
So
but
my question to you is, what is the criteria? Because I don't have a concealed carry. I just got a regular FOID card. What is the criteria to achieve? Under what circumstances would I be allowed to be granted a concealed carry permit?
well, first of all, you have to go through an enhanced background check. Okay, you have to submit your fingerprints. Okay, you don't have to, but it's probably a good idea, unless you're a jewel thief or something. But
Things already got them. I drove a school bus.
it doesn't matter. They want a new set. But anyway, so they check your background checks. They check about 32 databases when they give you a FOID card. They test an extra 6, and they're like the national. You talk about the national. God dang it! Criminal. NCIC and NCIDS and some other ones. The terrorist watch list. All that gets checked. Okay. So, but because you're on a terrorist watch list does not necessarily mean you won't get a concealed carry permit, because for whatever reason, nobody seems to know how you get on a watch list, nor how you get off the watch list. So some of that is baloney. Mike?
I just want to add something. There's a high-profile shooting in the news recently, and I believe that in the next legislative season, this may result in somebody introducing legislation to try to make fingerprints mandatory for even the FOID card, and that was the paramedic who got shot in the Little Village neighborhood in Chicago. Right. He had a new assumed name, and the background check did not reveal that he was in fact a convicted felon.
Right. He cleansed himself, got a new social security number, got a new identity, and I can see that it might happen with the concealed carry permit. But on the other hand, we've had one incident, so yeah. Other questions? Yes.
You also have to do a 16-hour training course.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Find a trainer on the Illinois State Police website as well, or go through.
I was just wondering about the record because.
What?
To the Illinois State Rifle Association.
I'm sorry?
I was just wondering what type of. I have no criminal background, but I got a misdemeanor arrest for 12 years.
That's what everybody says. No, so you would go through the enhanced background check. All right. And so, I'm sorry? It might count in Cook County. They'll file a protest. Yeah. That's the kind of stuff that's going on. And so, you might get a concealed carry permit. It might take you a while, but give it a try. We'll see if it works. Yeah, well. So, anyway, other questions? Yes, sir. Yes, both sirs.
More of information for other people. Hello?
Yeah,
It's more of an information for other people, because this is from a personal experience, is I don't know how many people that have FOI cards realize that if you speed through school zone, which is zero tolerance, so it could be 1-2 miles over the speed limit, and this occurred to me in Wheaton about 1.5 years ago, that if you go to court, traffic court, and you plead guilty because you think you're just going to get supervision and get off, think twice, because if you plead guilty, automatically you will lose your license, your driver's license, for 6 months, and you will have a Class 4 felony, which means your FOID card could become void. So
Yeah.
I don't know if a lot of people know that.
I have a comment to make on that. I got a call from a guy, and he and his wife got a divorce about 3 years ago or something. And so it was an amicable divorce. But the attorney suggested that they both get orders of protection against each other just to make sure everything was okay. Now, I don't know who this attorney is, but he needs to have his neck stretched from an oak tree, because both of them lost their firearm rights, and they aren't ever going to get them back. So, don't plead guilty to nothing, period. So get F. Lee Bailey or somebody, but don't plead guilty. Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about reciprocity? For a while, there seemed to be a lot of states, or Illinois for concealed carry being accepted in other states, and then all of a sudden it seems like they're not.
Well, there's a difference between reciprocity and recognition. All right, the Illinois training, because it is so extensive, more extensive than it is in any other state, is recognized by something like 25 or 26 states. So all the contiguous states, So you can go to Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, Kentucky, Michigan, Indiana, and the Illinois is recognized, plus a variety of other ones, Maine, and different ones. Okay, but that's recognition. That's not reciprocity. Reciprocity means that the state of Illinois will recognize the Texas concealed carry, the Indiana concealed carry, and so forth and so on. For reciprocity to work, it can't be a constitutional carry situation. It actually has to be a licensed. So if you, for example, a prime example is Arizona. You can have constitutional carry in Arizona, but if you want to travel with it, you have to be licensed by the state of Arizona, because it's kind of like saying you can drive in Arizona, and you don't need a driver's license, but if you go to Nevada, you're going to have one. So that kind of idea. We're a long way away from reciprocity with other states because we have, one of the areas is that we require a mental health background check, which I think is going to wind up happening everywhere, anyway, sooner or later, simply because of public demand. And other states do not. Hawaii is one of the states. Of course, we're all just waiting to carry in Hawaii, but they only issued one permit last year anyway. But so reciprocity works like your driver's license. If you go to Ohio, the Ohio State Police recognize your Illinois license. Okay, but that's not what's going to happen here anytime soon because of the difference in mental health background checks and the difference in training requirements. Now, if you look, in 1986, Florida passed their concealed carry law. When's the last time they made a change to it? Who can tell me? This year. Okay? They constantly, this is a growing, see, it's a maturing, I say, a maturing of people's attitudes and that sort of thing over time. So that those laws are going to change. They may not change tomorrow. They may not change next year, but they're going to change, and they're going to become liberalized depending on what happens in a presidential election. Simple as that. It might happen despite what happens in a presidential election, but it's going to be a lot harder. So it's going to take time. You know, when the people were all worried that we would all be running around with mops and buckets cleaning up the blood in parking lots, people fighting over a parking place, that sort of thing, but none of that has come to pass. And the whole thing is kind of quieted down. Now, the anti-gun contingent in this state is very much opposed to concealed carry. I got calls today from people who were, who are going through one of the suburbs demanding that people put up no carry signs in their businesses and that sort of business. So those people are very active and they have to be dealt with. But, so they're out there and they're well financed. You know, they got more money than we do. Anytime Michael Bloomberg wrote a $40 million check to set up a study group of statisticians and whatnot to develop arguments against firearms. So that's the kind of thing we're up against. Everything, well, the NRA is all powerful. The NRA has got a lot of people, but every darn dime that they use, almost like us, goes into the fight some way or another. But Mr. Bloomberg don't have that problem. I know we used to give the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence used to get 2 checks a year from the Joyce Foundation for $350,000 apiece. Where do I sign? You know, we don't have that. So it becomes a money problem, something we have to work at. Other questions? Okay, I would like to thank all of you. Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
Took me a little while to get here. I have a few questions. Since the USCCA is now affiliated with ISRA, is there any sort of cross-promotion with those who train for concealed carry for both the USCCA and the ISRA?
Well, the answer to that probably will happen. We're only about a month old, okay? So we just got our first paperwork a couple days ago. So, but we're working at it, yes. I'm sure that will happen.
With regard to executive orders, is there ever been a case where an executive order has been undone by other than an oblique measure? In other words, where an executive order may have been undone by a succeeding law which renders the executive order moot?
The answer is I don't really know that. I think the answer is yes, but I don't really know that.
Okay, and third is with regard to Sheriff Dart's exceptions or objections, and then he has apparently some sort of mechanism for generating these, and then the whole thing goes to a review board.
Right, you're talking about
Concealed carry.
any police department, yes.
He can't make these things out of whole cloth, can he?
No, but if you've been arrested but not convicted, that's the kind of thing he's objecting to, and it still plugs up the process.
I see. Well, what does the review board then make their decision on?
They look at the evidence that they have, and they determine whether it's a false claim or not. And the false claim comes from whether the police department's making a false claim or not.
Okay. Uh-oh, there we are. I'm trying to remember what the fourth question is. Well, if I think of it, I'll be back later.
Okay.
Sorry about that, but I got a little.
That's all right. You paid the money to get here.
Yeah, right. In the state of Illinois, how far do you think we are away from doing what Connecticut did in registering firearms mandatorily?
A ways. Never is a nasty word. Don't ever let it in your vocabulary.
I remembered the one point that I wanted to bring up. In looking into a concealed carry, for those who are interested but don't yet have one, there's like 16 hours of required
16
training
hours,
for
yeah.
class.
Unless you take my class, they generally run 18.
And then it gets cut down to 8 if you have an honorable discharge, a DD 214. Is that
Yes,
so?
it can be.
Okay.
Other questions? Yes, sir. Oh, sorry.
Just real quick.
Oh,
You probably can see me.
there you are.
I'm with Senator Tom Cullerton. So the only reason I'm here is to thank you guys for your financial support, since it seems to be wrapping up. I wanted you guys to get your questions in first before I took time. But just on a small note, if you guys ever have any trouble with your concealed carry permits or FOID cards, call our office, because we will beat the ever-living crap out of the state police to get all your paperwork pushed through. We've done that for countless constituents before they updated the system. And then you would actually hear the click-clack on the old computers when you're on the phone with them. So it's not making this up. And then the other thing too, we're one of those 5 legislators that are on the Democratic side that give you guys the cushion. And the reason why we're there is because of people like Glenn Carlson, who make a weekly stop in and fill us in.
Been pointed out in the crowd. Now everyone knows.
On all of your issues, but not just that. When the concealed carry bill came up in the first year of Tom's time in office, he called the district office when the vote was coming up, and he goes, "I need you to pull a report of all the calls that came in for and against." There was over 1,000 calls, for passing the concealed carry bill. And he's like, "Well, how many were in the district?" 95% of them were in the district. How many came in against? There were, I think, 12, and only 2 of the people actually lived in our district. So that is why it is your active engagement in the process. You keep legislators honest. And I will say the other thing too, just to throw out a little red meat, definitely look at who filled out the questionnaires, because a lot of the Republican targets this year did not fill them out. Now, targets, for those of you who don't speak the campaign speak I speak, those are people who are in the really tough races. So just remember that when you go to the polls. We filled it out, we voted with you guys, and our opponent didn't. So thank you again for your financial support. Again, Tom Cullerton, November 8th. If you live from 83 to 59 county line down to about Roosevelt, there's like a 95% chance you're in the district. So hope to get your vote. I have to get back to the campaign office.
All right, thank you very much. But while you're here, fairly honest assessment?
Oh, yeah, very good. Yeah, you guys, one of the best lobbying teams in the state, hands down. So everything you guys have said is dead on. I think, just keep pushing, keep people honest. That's the best thing you can do, because that's the one thing that the other side of this issue does not have is the people power. And I think there is nothing that replaces people power. You can buy so many things. You can't buy, can't buy feet. So help out your candidates, get involved, and just make sure that everyone knows your issues. And the other thing too is people have stereotypes all the time, and I've always said with my more liberal friends from the city, they have an idea of what this room would look like. And I'm always like, no, these are by far the most polite, God-fearing people you'll ever meet. And it would, lend yourself to, go to a meeting. And I promise when we have our liberal parties in Chicago, we're, not doing horrible, bad things either. So,
Our knuckles aren't skinned up from dragging.
Exactly. So keep up the good work. We're fighting for you down there, and keep us honest.
All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, it's getting toward 8:30. We're gonna have to pull up stakes here pretty
Quick
quick.
question, Rich. What's the status of the?
And who are you, sir? Do I know you?
Yeah, Bob.
I know you are, right?
Many years.
You're supposed to introduce yourself.
Oh, Bob Swartz.
Okay.
What's the status of the legislation that will allow local communities to amend their anti-gun laws or to initiate anti-gun laws?
You're talking about Senator Morrison's bill.
Right.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's a proposal up by Senator Morrison, she's been floating around all over the place, that would change the concealed carry law so preemption goes away and local communities can govern it. So she's been floating that anywhere, and I don't see it going anywhere, but it will certainly be tried, so stand by. Okay? Okay, we've got to get out of here, folks. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. Hope I answered some of your questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Second Amendment to the Constitution does not grant you the right to keep and bear arms. It simply recognizes the God-given right to do so. That's it.
Hey, hi Rich, how you doing, bud?
All right. Well, I'll see you Monday, huh? Yeah, I guess.